Welcome back, everyone. This is my full Marvel What If Episode 7 video for the party version of Thor, so we'll break it all down. There's a bunch of Easter eggs, and obviously they set up the big multiverse crossover with a multiverse version of the Avengers team, the Guardians of the Multiverse, at the end of the episode as well. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes. They are going to be doing What If Season 2. It'll also be 9 episodes, so I'll start talking about that after the finale in a couple weeks. We also have all the Hawkeye episodes that'll be starting after What If. I'll be doing episode videos for that as well, too. Careful for spoilers if you have not seen the episode yet. Starting with the episode title, What If Thor Were an Only Child? Examining how Loki affected his development as a character when they were growing up. Or how he didn't affect him, because obviously this version of Loki grew up on Jotunheim. You could also think of it as the Thor versus Captain Marvel episode. For those of you that ever wanted to see the two of them fight, like, what would that look like? How would that go down? I will talk about that too, because that's obviously a big question. Who is the most powerful Avenger? And don't worry, I will explain what happened at the end of the episode with this Infinity Gauntlet final boss form version of Ultron. If it wasn't clear, he is meant to be the main villain of the What If series. But the opening scene starts with the same opening scene from the first Thor movie in the desert with Jane Foster and Darcy in the RV researching anomalies and wormholes, waiting for the Bifrost to dump Thor in the desert, only this time because events have changed because of the big Nexus event, it takes him somewhere else. And for the most part, pretty much everybody from the Thor movies, and even the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, came back to do their characters from the movies. Chris Hemsworth is playing Thor, Tom Hiddleston was playing Loki again. He already came back for What If Episode 3, for that version of Loki in the other universe that wound up conquering Earth. Kat Dennings came back as Darcy, Natalie Portman came back as Jane Foster, pretty much everybody from Thor Ragnarok, like Jeff Goldblum came back as the Grand Master, even Karen Gillan came back as Nebula, Seth Green came back as Howard the Duck, Samuel L. Jackson, Clark Gregg, Kobe Smulders all came back as their characters. Taika Waititi came back as Korg, even Clancy Brown came back as Surtur. But Jane Foster tries to call Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. talking about alien invasion. They hang up on her because they initially don't believe her, and Nick Fury is kind of already aware of aliens to begin with. It's a bit of a sly reference to the Skrulls' Secret Invasion from the Captain Marvel movies, foreshadowing later in the episode when they pull out Captain Marvel's pager and Party Thor meets other versions of Skrulls from outer space. When she says 2 years ago the same anomaly struck Star Alpha Icarus and destroyed it, that's all foreshadowing for Thor explaining how his other party previously wound up destroying another planet. Although the way he explained it, the planet was already in the process of getting ready to be destroyed by a giant meteorite, and they were just celebrating the end of that world or the impending end of that world with a giant party. So their party itself did not destroy the planet, it was already going to be destroyed. But her referencing the energy of the Bifrost being present during the destruction of that planet is also a reference to the first Thor movie when Loki tried to use the Bifrost to destroy Jotunheim. And then the big change to this scene from the first Thor movie is that instead of the Bifrost dumping him in the desert where they are here and then running him over with the car, it dumps him in Las Vegas. And they play it like Thor arriving in Wakanda during Avengers Infinity War, his big scene of showing up with Stormbreaker. But the big record drop joke here is that he announces himself as the party prince of the universe, and he's here to rock their world metaphorically with a huge party. He shows up with the Warriors 3 in tow, who also start rocking out in the middle of a random crowd, and then the Watcher appears in an even bigger way than in previous episodes. Like I said, this has been a running theme the past several episodes, where the Watcher slowly manifests more and more, like he's appearing closer and closer to the characters in every episode. But then as he's done in previous episodes, the Watcher sort of narrates the main MCU timeline version of events, just to set up how things are different and what the big Nexus event was in this universe that caused everything to go down differently. And it's just a way of showing you how important Loki was in shaping who Thor became. One of my few complaints about the episode, though, is that it actually feels like they're almost closer as bros in this episode, like brothers from another mother, like friends. They're almost closer than they felt like they were in the main MCU movies. Like, wait, what? In talking about Loki Easter eggs here from the Loki series, the major Nexus event of this alternate universe was that originally when Odin defeated Laufey, Loki's father, and pushed the Frost Giants back to Jotunheim, when he found baby Loki left out in the cold to die, instead of taking him and raising him as his own son to maintain this peace treaty between the Asgardians and the Frost Giants, he took the baby back to Laufey to be raised in the traditional manner a prince of the Frost Giants would have been. So this Loki grows up to be a regular-looking, very tall Frost Giant. One of the other continuity mistakes, I think, though, is the idea that Laufey would take baby Loki back. The whole idea was that he didn't want baby Loki. Like, Laufey didn't lose baby Loki, he literally put him there so that he would die. There are a couple of minor continuity issues that I've noticed with the What If series. I'll also talk about this when I talk about what's going on with the Infinity Gauntlet version of Ultron, because there's a big continuity error there, even though some of these things are relatively minor and they didn't bother me that much, but you do kind of notice them. There have been continuity errors in the live-action Marvel movies all the time, like the whole timeline error that they made during Spider-Man Homecoming with that 8 years card. So then they pick up during the events of the first Thor movie when Odin is getting ready to go into the Odin Sleep and regenerate his life force, the Odin Force. Frigga pieces out, saying that she's going to go visit her sisters. Frigga is actually from Vanaheim. She's the daughter of the king of the Vanir. There was a joke about a history lesson going on at the end of the episode. Cool Marvel history lesson in real life about how Asgard was formed, or at least the backstory of Asgard. Bor, who we saw during Thor the Dark World, was born in the kingdom of the Aesir. When Bor eventually took the throne from their father, one of his brothers split off to form his own kingdom and named it Vanaheim. That's the planet that they're on at the beginning of Thor the Dark World. After a couple wars between he and his brother, their different kingdoms, Bor decided to bring their people back together, reunite their people because they came from the same race, using a marriage alliance between his son Odin and the daughter of his brother, the king of the Vanir, Freya. So when Odin eventually took the throne from Bor, they basically combined all their people, the Vanir and the Aesir, and they became the Asgardians, naming the new kingdom Asgard. Even though some of the Vanir still live on Vanaheim, not everybody moved to the new Asgardian homeworld when it was formed. Maybe in a future Marvel movie we'll hear more about Frigga and Odin's backstory. But in the episode, when Odin goes into the Odin Sleep, as Freya says, Thor becomes proxy king of Asgard in his absence, which is basically what was going to happen at the beginning of the first Thor movie anyway, until Loki pulled his prank allowing the Frost Giants to invade to interrupt his big day, just to take the piss out of him a little. But there's no Loki here this time to do that, so Thor becomes king without any kind of effort or trouble. But they go past Odin's vault, walk past the now fake Infinity Gauntlet as we know it, claiming that he's going to throw a party on Earth. He's not going to be a boring king like Odin, because Heimdall won't care about Earth because it's such a backwater planet. Little does Thor know there are actually a couple Infinity Stones on planet Earth right now. Then big Easter egg for Thor Ragnarok, the bottomless mugs that Doctor Strange gave him to drink from with the beer. He passes them all mugs, claiming later that they will never be empty, because magic, they all refill themselves. I'm not going to name every single character in the background here. I feel like it's enough to say that pretty much every single major character, even some of the background ones, come from Thor Ragnarok, from the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Some of the bigger ones I'll point out though. Like here, Scourge shows up, but it's not Karl Urban because he doesn't have any speaking lines. Same thing with Valkyrie later in the episode and some of the other Guardians of the Galaxy characters. Like Nebula is one of the only Guardians that actually has speaking lines, and it was Karen Gillan that came back to do her voice. There are scrolls hanging out in the background that Thor talks to later that change themselves into versions of Thor. They weren't secretly hiding on planet Earth though, because you can see they're wearing their normal spacesuits, even though some Skrulls were on planet Earth during this period. They'll get into that during the Secret Invasion series next year in Captain Marvel 2. Then Jane Foster winds up introducing herself to Thor, and they play it kind of like they did during the first Thor movie when they met for the first time, like them being super surprised by how good-looking he is. Darcy then makes fun of Howard the Duck, calling him a loser, whose retort is to make fun of her for being a brunette. Apparently, Howard the Duck is not a fan of brunettes, but I think that's all a misdirect, because later, they wind up getting married. Married in Vegas on the spot, as you do when you're super drunk. And as far as we know, they're still married at the end of the episode, Mrs. Howard the Duck. Not now, Howard. When Thor makes the joke about horse gods, in Norse mythology in real life, Loki did turn himself into a female horse to mate with another male horse and create Odin's eight-legged horse. That's right, obviously they didn't do that in the MCU, but they do reference a lot of Loki gender flipping and pansexuality during the Loki series, which is sort of a wink at the Norse mythology stories about Loki. Thor explains their party on that destroyed planet Alpha Star, and I do kind of wonder now what happened to Fandrel's goat Gary. Where did that wind up? Darcy's not a date moment with Howard the Duck is also similar to the joke on WandaVision where she almost went on a date with Vision. There was the scene where mind-controlled Darcy is inside the Hex thinking Vision is trying to hit on her and just reluctantly agrees to go on a date with him before she remembers who she is. Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster DJs the party. It turns into an even bigger rave. Nebula tries to gamble to win some money for a new cybernetic eye. Most of this is all pretty light stuff, all just played for comedy. Before the episode was released, the showrunner said that they meant for this episode to be much less tragic than the Doctor Strange episode ending. Even though they had a big WTF ending, which was kind of a downer like, oh no, spoke too soon, looks like we're gonna foobar this universe too. Overall, the episode had a fairly light tone. Thor and Jane Foster's tattoos are meant to be a big reference for the first Thor movie when Thor was explaining how magic was just advanced science that humans did not understand yet. And because Natalie Portman's Jane Foster is also going to become a version of female Thor in Thor Love and Thunder, you could call her tattoo of Thor's hammer an Easter egg for that as well. The next morning, everybody has hangovers, waking up in a Vegas hotel, and S.H.I.E.L.D. starts blowing up their phones, Crossbones knocking their door down with Maria Hill. We see Rocket Raccoon finally make an appearance in an episode. He wasn't in the T'Challa Star-Lord episode with the Guardians of the Galaxy for whatever reason. Thor also refers to this version of Rocket Raccoon as a cute little rabbit, just like he called him during Avengers Infinity War. Maria Hill explains what happened to Nick Fury. Do you know why I'm the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now? Because Korg wound up plowing through Nick Fury doing a cannonball into the fountain, so he's still out cold. Clark Gregg came back as Coulson, and the way he explains it, his sort of chart here makes it sound like the party itself is kind of like a cancer spreading all over the planet. Like for a little while in the episode, they make it seem like Thor's party might actually destroy the planet. Then they set up the whole Captain Marvel twist, with them revealing to Jane Foster, nope, this is not the first time we have met aliens, because pager. And even though they don't say it in the episode, Odin and his father before him, Bor, would have visited Earth many times in ancient history, being worshipped as gods by Norse people, Germanic tribes, for thousands and thousands of years before this. Really good example is that Odin knows about the Eternals. That's how long he's been around. So aliens have visited Earth long before the events of the Captain Marvel movie. And because the What If series is meant to be canon to the MCU, I'm also assuming that if she knew about the pager during this, then the main MCU version of Maria Hill also probably knew about Nick Fury's souped-up space pager. When they jump to Paris, France, you see Thor hanging out with a couple of the Sovereign Rays from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. We'll see them again during Guardians 3, like Ayesha will come back in Guardians 3, because they have to pay off the whole Adam Warlock Guardians of the Galaxy 2 post-credit scene. We finally get to see Frost Giant Loki in full attire, wearing an ice crown, denoting his position as Prince of the Frost Giants, just as Thor is currently King of Asgard. He calls Thor the son of a witch, because Frigga is a witch in the MCU. It's also a reference to Thor Ragnarok when Thor joked that Loki dressed like a witch. And like I said earlier, the big second record drop moment of the episode is that even though they grew up separately, they still think of each other as unofficial brothers, like they're just as close as bros as they were as real brothers. And even though the boom joke is all about Captain Marvel showing up, Thor does make kind of a masturbation joke when he says, I only boom in private. Then because of the era that Captain Marvel comes from, she calls Thor Whitesnake because all of her references are from the 80s and 90s, like it's her version of calling him Point Break, the way that Iron Man called him Point Break, because of the way he looks, because of his hairdo. Then they have their big Thor versus Captain Marvel throwdown fight. And them getting into it, I think, is meant to pay off that brief teaser from Avengers Endgame when they meet, and it just seems like for a hot second, Thor might pick a fight with her, but they don't. Like, what would it look like if Thor fought Captain Marvel? A lot of people were wondering this when Avengers Endgame came out, because they're both supposed to be some of the most powerful Avengers. And as you see in the episode, it's kind of like watching Thor fight the Hulk. Just a couple of beings that can both soak a ton of physical damage and energy damage, so the fights theoretically would just drag on forever, unless one of them had a special weapon to power them up even more, or one of them just made an error during the fight. Like you go to watch a big boxing match in Vegas, except their fight takes place all over planet Earth because they punch each other with so much force. He knocks her all the way into Stonehenge from Paris and then knocks all the stones down. When Captain Marvel claims that no one knows what Stonehenge is, that's actually not true. Currently, the prevailing scientific theory, just based on all the evidence, is that ancient Neolithic Britons created the site together, like many different tribes of ancient Britons created it together, not just the Druids. And it was created to serve many different functions, like it was both a sacred burial site, a religious holy place that people took pilgrimages to, a ceremonial site, and a place for burying royalty and high-ranking members of tribes of that era. Captain Marvel winds up pulling the same trick that Iron Man did during the Thor vs. Iron Man fight in the first Avengers movie, where she winds up using all the lightning energy from the hammer to power herself up. Then Thor gets the upper hand on her using the same trick back in Vegas that he used on Loki during the first Thor movie, just putting the hammer on top of her body to keep her from being able to move, and she's not powerful enough to counter the force of Odin's enchantment. The only way someone who's not worthy could lift it would be if they had magic powerful enough to break Odin's spell on it. Like Doctor Strange jokes in Thor Ragnarok that he can't pick it up, like he's not that powerful. But I do think, though, early theory that Scarlet Witch could probably break Odin's enchantment with her chaos magic, just because of the way they explain chaos magic being so OP in the MCU. Don't worry, we'll talk more about that kind of stuff during Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness when we get the first trailer for that. When Captain Marvel goes back to the helicarrier, they reference Goose the cat, or the Flurkin, because it's not a cat technically. Maria Hill saying that she has a cat that can devour whole armies. Darcy understands the Top Gun reference, making even more Top Gun jokes about her being Maverick, reciting lines from the movie. Then the whole thing about her not using her full power because it would destroy part of the Earth, that actually is true. Technically, she could go binary, which we have not seen yet in the MCU movies. We might see that during Captain Marvel too. It's like a final boss form version of Captain Marvel that she can take where she becomes as powerful, like her energy output becomes as powerful as a binary star. That's why her name when she does this is Binary. They also kind of slut-shame Jane Foster for sleeping with Thor, telling her that you're not helping at all, dump her back on the ground, where Howard the Duck comes back to remind Darcy that they're still married. To make as many duck puns as possible, that duck sure does get a lot of tail. Then they get the bright idea to call Thor's mother on him, because he gave them the idea earlier when he explained how Frigga was the only one who was powerful enough to discipline him as a child, besides Odin, because of her magic. And even though they haven't really got into this in the MCU yet, Frigga is kind of a hardcore shield maiden too, like she's just as strong a fighter as Odin is. She's not quite as strong as Thor or the Hulk, but still very, very strong. Darcy makes a He-Man and the Masters of the Universe reference when they're naming off all of the other major Asgardians like Odin, Frigga, Heimdall, and all the other aliens just wind up trashing the entire planet, vandalizing all the major monuments, setting up the big montage that they have at the end of the episode. Even Clancy Brown shows up as Surtur for that funny scene with the Statue of Liberty, thinking that it's a real woman. After Jane Foster shouts so loud that Heimdall notices, he uses the Bifrost to send her to Vanaheim to alert Frigga, who explains everything about what's been going on. And the whole subplot here about Maria Hill wanting to use the nukes on Thor and Captain Marvel is also a reference to the nuclear warhead from the first Avengers movie. The World Security Council was going to destroy New York City with collateral damage using a nuclear strike just so that they could close the Tesseract portal, and it probably would not have worked. When Maria Hill claims Captain Marvel would be fine in the blast, she is kind of correct. Captain Marvel would be able to absorb the nuclear radiation as energy, but the concussive force of the blast would probably knock her out cold for at least a week. When Thor asks Captain Marvel to smile, that's also a reference to a scene from the Captain Marvel movie. Frigga winds up using the same trick that Heimdall used during Avengers Infinity War when he sent the Hulk back to warn Doctor Strange, using dark magic to open a Bifrost portal instead of using their regular technology. Nebula winds up referencing Thanos when everyone starts to bail on him. I think I hear my dad calling, later. But they have their cleaning montage, and then Captain Marvel helps Thor make it look like he was telling the truth about the cultural exchange. Like she does give him an iPad with a bunch of information on Earth so that Thor can learn more about Earth's culture. And the reason why Frigga knew all about Captain Marvel, like I know who you are, is because Odin and Frigga, the Asgardians, have been monitoring Earth for thousands of years. For example, like I said, Odin knows all about the Eternals. They know everything major that's been going on Midgard. They end the episode kind of in the same way that they end the first Thor movie, with Thor and Jane becoming a little more serious about their relationship, like it's going to become a bigger thing. The planet of unicorns that he promises to take her to is actually a thing from the comics. Planet Unicorn is a Miss Marvel reference, I guess because we have Captain Marvel here in this episode, and we're getting the Miss Marvel series early next year, but in the comics, Miss Marvel writes this fanfiction story about the Avengers fighting together on a planet of unicorns. And the funny way they play this ending record drop moment is they make it seem like the happy ending is the actual record drop, when really it is Ultron showing up with all the Infinity Stones. But they play the sappy love music as the watcher narrates they lived happily ever after, but then he's like, wait, what? Big record drop moment as Ultron steps through the portal from the multiverse with his Ultron robots, with all 6 Infinity Stones and Vision's body, as if he has somehow become a living Infinity Gauntlet like final boss form Ultron from another universe. So if you haven't been watching my other What If videos, I've been saying this for a while now, this is meant to be a big crossover series with the other universe versions of characters from different episodes crossing over in a big Multiverse Avengers team-up for the finale. But while this is happening, while they're fighting Ultron and his army, Marvel Zombies are also supposed to come back, so I will do a separate video about this talking about final boss form Ultron with the Infinity Stones and what's happening in the actual finale. My full Marvel What If Episode 8 video will post next week just like normal, and if you spotted any other big Easter eggs or references in the episode that I didn't talk about in the video, just write them below in the comments. Everyone click here for my brand new Eternals trailer video for Kit Harington's Black Knight character, and click here for my What If trailer video for the final 2 episodes. Thank you so much for watching, everyone stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.